Well, hey there, everyone, and I'm so excited about today's live workshop. As you can see, this is live, and we are broadcasting right now on the spot. I want to just quickly turn over to your comments to make sure that you can see me and that you can hear me okay. So please let me know in the chat, and I also just want to welcome all of you who are joining us, both Beat Academy members and anybody who might just be passing by on YouTube. I want to welcome you to our live workshop. Our main focus today is going to be on mixing and mastering. We're going to cover that topic today. So if this is something that excites you, let me know in the comments below. So let me go and check, make sure that you guys can see me. Okay, sounding loud and clear. All right, I can listen just fine. Hi all, we got a lot of people on here. So Jordan Mars works fine. All right. Kevin Berg, great. Yeah, New Jerusalem Studios. Yep, I can hear you. Awesome. So for all my Beat Academy members, just want to say, hey, what's up? Let me know. We've got Dave Kahn here. Just say where you're from. Just great to say hi to all of you guys. Once again, sorry to give you my cheek, but I am looking over here at the chat. So glad to see that you guys can hear and see me okay. We've got some familiar faces here. Magnus Robinson, perfect. Sakura, great to see you. Philip, all right. Dave M, all the way from Ireland. DJ Smash, Sound Systems. Hey, it's Gabby. All right. Good to see you guys. Gabby's on. Tony, Peter. All right, we've got so much to go through today. So, yeah, we had such a great response from our last live workshop that I figured I just told my team, hey, what if we just did this like once a month? And yeah, and so it was something we're really, really excited about implementing and introducing. So, mixing and mastering. Now, the goal and what I'm planning to do here throughout our time together, I just want to give you the lay of the land here, is I'm going to be spending some time taking a Beat Academy members track, and I'm just going to kind of implement some mixing fundamentals. Now, I know throughout our time together here on this live stream, I won't be able to get to all the nooks and crannies about mixing and mastering. And some of you might leave this workshop, hopefully not, with more questions than you did coming in. But fortunately, I want to point you to a resource that can help you exponentially answer those questions that you might have when we cover the topic of mixing and mastering. And that is, of course, my breakthrough mixing and mastering course. Now, before we even get started, I want to hear from a lot of you, the Beat Academy members, or anybody who has taken my mixing and mastering course. I just want to hear from you quickly in the chat. Has it been helpful for you guys? Has anything in the mixing mastering course helped you elevate or really just kind of take your next step forward when it comes to mixing your own projects? I want to talk about a couple, myths that go on into mixing your own stuff. But just quickly, I want to ask some of those who have actually watched the Breakthrough Mixing and Mastering course. I've just recently updated it a couple months ago, and all my Beat Academy members, once they purchase a course, they'll always have access to any of the updates, any of the tweaks, as long as they retain their membership. So, yeah, I just want to hear from you guys. Will Joy says, you have upped my mixing game by 120%. Will, that's awesome. Mr. Boss, check Insight TV channel. Okay, sure, we'll check that out. We have a couple people who've just started kind of watching it. Watch About L. Eftar says he's watched half. Jordan Marls, great course indeed. Also, all of the updates that you add. So, really cool. Kenan is saying, just starting on it, very helpful as a noob, and seems to go really in-depth for once I have the basics down. Some very good insights. No data interpreter. The course is great. Totally worth it. Oh man, you guys are awesome. Thank you. And look, there's plenty of resources online that can really help with mixing and mastering. But I wanted I always want to know if what I'm doing is really impacting your life, because if it's not doing that, then I need to rethink what I'm doing, right? So I'm always grateful for the feedback. It helps me grow, and it helps me better equip you with what it is that you want to be doing. All right. So also says, I haven't paid for anything yet since I'm too young, but your free stuff you do on YouTube, like the Tame Impala reproduction, is really helpful. Man, that's awesome. That is great. And I'm not expecting you to, hey, if you can't pay for it, I really do hope everything we're doing on YouTube has been a benefit and a help for you. Okay, so are you guys not ready to get started? We're ready to start this workshop on mixing and mastering. So what I want to focus in on are some of the key principles that can really help you get a good mix started. And these are just some key principles that I've learned throughout the past, even working alongside. Now, I'm coming from a producer perspective. And so there's two sides to mixing. There's this aspect of the mixing engineer who normally just focuses on the mixing and mastering aspect, not even so much as the mastering, but just the mixing aspect of it. I don't know what's going on with my words today. But what they do is they're receiving files, receiving projects from other either artists, producers, or other people, and they are putting their perspective and they're mixing it. There's that one aspect to it. Then there's the aspect of, hey, I'm producing my own stuff. I'm recording, producing, writing, arranging, even tracking my own vocals. And then you're wearing the hat of mixing as well. And in the midst of juggling all of that, it can be hard to get a firm grasp as to getting your song to sound the way you want them to. So just really quickly, if you're in that boat, if you're in that basket of, hey, I'm producing, recording, writing my own stuff, and I'm also mixing my own stuff, would you let me know? Would you press the number 1 and type that into the chat right now? Let me see. Yeah, all right, Gabby says 1. Well, we got a lot of ones. All right. And this is good to know, because this is really good. This is where I want to emphasize a lot of my time and energy in this workshop. Once again, the question is, if you're recording, writing, producing your own material, and then you're mixing it as well, let me know. And if you're just, hey, I'm not really doing a lot of that stuff, I'm mostly just mixing other people's projects, you can press the number 2. But as you can see, this whole chat is just flooded with number 1. So what that tells me is that there's going to be there is a specific way to approach mixing when producing that's going to be very beneficial. I think a lot of times mixing comes from the vantage point of mixing engineers, where sometimes they're given great stems, great tracks to begin with. And we're here scratching our heads sometimes when we watch mixing engineers go ahead and do their thing, and we're like, yeah, but how did you even get it to sound good in the first place? That's half the battle, right? So does anybody resonate with that? Does anybody struggle with that? With the fact is, like, you watch a lot of mixing engineer stuff, and it seems like they're starting off halfway done with the race, so to speak. You can type in the letter Y if that resonates with you. Got my octopus milk here. Wiki says yes. New Jerusalem Studio says yes. Jolie Fox says yes. All right, so hopefully what my intention and goal is for this workshop and our time together, here's what we're going to do. So we'll spend about maybe 40 minutes going into and diving in a Beat Academy members track. I want to talk about some of the key principles of what to expect when you're producing your sessions. So yeah, okay, so if that's the case, if everybody's really flooding the floodgates here with that, what I'll do is I'll spend a little bit of time going through some of a Beat Academy members mix. Then I want to open up another session and give you a little bit of the perspective of producing to mixing, right? That goes hand in hand. Then I want to stop and answer some questions that you here watching might have. So we're going to have a Q&A time. I want to get to some of your questions. Could be mix or mastering related. And then what I want to do is go into some of my Beat Academy members mixes and just kind of give some feedback. And then we'll end our session together with another Q&A. So Before we dive in, for those of you, as you can see, we've already had some great feedback from those who've taken the Breakthrough Mixing Mastering course. Yes, obviously I would love to cram as much as I can in our time together, but if you are really interested in getting your songs to sound the way you really intend for them to sound, the way you hear them in your head, and you're trying to get the mix down, then let me encourage you to go to beatacademy.com/mixing. You can click the description box below, and I'm currently having my Breakthrough Mixing course half off this week. So if you're watching the replay, jump on that. We're going to have it for limited a time at this price. Definitely recommend that you get on that and take advantage of this pricing. All right, so let's just dive right in. Excuse me. So now here is a session. These are stems sent to me by a Beat Academy member, Ralph, and the song is called Landing. All right, so you should be able to see this okay. And here, now I'm going to be focusing here, just to give you guys just an example. I'm going to be walking through this session. So if you are asking questions, just hold on. I'm going to announce when the Q&A time is approaching, so you can pair your questions. So if you have a question really quickly, or if you're seeing something I do and you're like, man, I want to go deeper into what he just did, write it down, and that way we can tackle that in more detail during our Q&A time. So here are the stems for the song called Landing. All right, pretty straightforward. This is the session. Things are pretty well organized, and this is a basic fundamental when it comes to mixing. Now, I know a lot of times this doesn't pertain to when you're producing, because already when you're producing your stuff, you've got things all over the place. You might not be as organized. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, about how do you transition from the producing stage to the mixing stage. Okay, so we'll open up another session for that. So right now, what we're going to be focusing in on is just what are some ways that we can get started on a mix from ground zero that can kind of help us get up and running closer to the sound we want. Now, the most important thing is what I've done here is he's got this session broken up. I'm going to play a little bit in a second, but I've got the original mix here, and I'm always going to go back and when I'm mixing someone else's projects or even my own, what I'll do is I'll export the last state of my production, right? Before I think I'm ready. Well, not true. It changes and it varies. And so this is more of the approach of mixing somebody else's project, okay? What are we going to learn from here? What are we going to gain from this? Is some of the things and techniques I'm going to implement in mixing this person's project, you can carry over to implementing on your projects. Then I'm going to open up a session where I'm producing, writing, and arranging, and then that's going to be helpful to identify where do you cross that line from passing the baton from producing over to mixing, okay? So hold on for that, so stay tuned. So let's just take a listen to the original mix. I'm going to just start from the beginning a little bit, and let's just solo all the elements we have here and play. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead. I want to go to maybe the heaviest part here. And right now what I'm initially doing is just getting the overall vibe of what's going on here in the mix. I'm going to go to this section here, a guitar solo, and it tends to be more maybe closer to the end where there's a lot more of all the elements are kind of in play. I want to hear everything going on, and let's just take a listen. All right, so just from the get-go, reference and so I think the most important aspect to help you in navigating your mix is what is the end goal here? What are we striving for? That is where references come into play. And this is going to be a huge key. And in the Breakthrough Mixing course, not only do I talk about references, but I actually show you step by step on how you should position your references. What are the key things to making sure that your references translate over to your mixes, right? And so all that is into detail there, but I'm listening to this. I don't know. The artist didn't give me a reference, or I just didn't have time to get a reference from the artist. So what's important here is understanding, what am I striving for? What is it that I'm really striving to go for? What's the overall vibe? And so even in the production process, it's important to have a reference placed in there. Okay. So when I was listening to this, I thought, hey, you know, it would be a pretty good reference. The song Midnight City by M83. So I have that over here in my session view. By the way, for those of you new to this, I am using Ableton Live 11, and here is session view, and I've got M83 Midnight City, and this will probably get flagged for copyright reasons, but here we go. Now, it's very similar, especially in the verse sections here, of some of the same ingredients that I'm hearing in the artist's project. Very similar drums, very much this this retro type of vibe. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and drop that over to the section I'm going to be focusing on right here. I'm going to have that there, and I'll start off with maybe just the chorus part here. And then what I'm trying to do is just A-B and get a sense of depth, right? So here are the two things I'm looking for, is the depth and the dimension. So essentially what I'm really trying to focus in on here when I'm listening to my references, okay, in light of, I go bit by bit. Let me listen to their kick drum. Where's their kick drum and compared to my kick drum, right? Now, granted, there are so many things going on. There's this song that I'm using as a reference has been mastered, has been mixed, has, you know, it's got all the bells and whistles. And so obviously when I quickly A-B from my reference to my current work in progress, I can immediately be discouraged. Let me know if that ever happens to you in the chat room. So you listen to the reference, you listen to yours, and you get discouraged immediately. Well, that tends to happen because then it feels like, well, there's no way I'm going to be matching that. Well, there's a couple illusions that you need to implement here that can help you with that. So let's talk about that. In this reference, what I need to first do is just make sure that I'm routing this through a separate output, so I'm not processing my reference with anything I'm willing to process my session. So I'm going to go, excuse me, I'm going to go externally out here, and I'm going to go outputs 1 and 2. So that's going to bypass my master fader. And right now, there's nothing on our master fader here. So that's step 1. And then step 2 is I need a gain stage. I need to understand and match levels, right? So we need a level match a little bit here. And once again, the breakthrough mixing and mastering course goes in further detail about this. But here what I'm going to do is now, while playing my track, so I have this muted, I'm going to play my track, and I'm going to gauge my VU meters here and just kind of get a ballpark of where I should be starting from. So we have two meters to gauge by. We have a peak meter here, which means there's two little flashing lights that you normally see on the top. Those two little light, those dashes, they're on the top there. That's our peak. And then we have our RMS, which is just your overall average. That's the one you need to be paying attention to. So pay attention to the RMS on this magenta track. This is our reference track. So where is that? I've lowered the volume, so the overall average is sitting right a little underneath -18. I'm looking at my average here on my master fader without any processing, without any plugins. We are at negative. We're just right about -18. So I'm trying to match that from the get-go, so that when I go back and forth and I solo them, I'm not getting drop kicked in the face with a huge surprise of, wow, your mix sucks. So that is a big plus. I need to make sure I'm level matching so I'm not taken by surprise. Then I start comparing depth. what are some of the elements that seem to be way more up front? What are the spotlight elements? I like to call it like the foreground elements. What are in the spotlight? What are some of the key things there? And honestly, this is one of the basic, this is a healthy foundation to start your mixes on, is start to train your ears and get used to understanding, okay, what makes this mix good? What is it, things that I really like about it? Maybe it's because they have, you know, a lot of subbiness, but it doesn't really, you don't really hear it. So that's important. So I'm trying to grab that. As I go back and forth with the reference, I start picking some elements one at a time. And I try to focus in on how can I get the kick to at least feel around where there is and all these things. Okay, so even listening to the reference quickly, I noticed that our snare drum is so weak compared to theirs. Let's work on the drums, okay? So I'm gonna do, I just wanna start using just using stock plugins, because honestly, there's so many things that you can get done with just what the tools you already have on hand. So let's start working with the drums. I just wanna kind of lock them into a good place, and already this session has them grouped into a group track here. So all the drums have, are coming out of here. I'll just say drum bus, right? So that's a drum bus here. We'll solo that. Now, these are already processed, meaning that they already, you know, this person has put the reverb, has put the reverse reverb, has done all the things that they wanted to do on there. And that's fine. That's exactly how I want them. I want to pick up from where this person left off, okay? So let's just go ahead and start with some bus processing first, because that might fix a lot of things without having to dive too much tweaking with the individual elements. So let's start with the drum bus plugin from Ableton Live. Now, if you're following along, you're using Logic, we're going to be implementing some saturation. So we're going to give some drive. We're going to give some a little bit of saturation with the drive, a little bit of overdrive with the crunch, some EQ to take away some of the high end, some transit designer. So let's walk through and let's start bringing this down to about 50% and see what it does. Yes, it's making it louder. Does that translate to better? Not all the time. So let's go ahead and add some more drive. So I'm just really going in on the drive here. And what I'm going to do is mess around with the transit. So less of the transits. What I'm basically doing is I'm making this, I'm decreasing the decay. It's going to be a lot shorter. So I'm accenting the initial transits. It's going to be really short but punchy. Transits on the right side, there's more sustain. So M83 had more of an exaggerated snare tail reverb, so I'll do that here. Now let's start to, now that I've got just that plugin alone, let's kind of glue these drums a little bit together. But why? Why add a compressor on there? This is, I think, some of the things, this is the things that I think can get us into trouble. Just adding things for the sake of adding them. Do I need a compressor? Let's figure this out. Right now, no, because what I'm hearing, let me go back to the reference. This is what you need to start doing. Get this beefed up a little bit, go back to the reference, see what needs to be calibrated and adjusted. And you're going to be doing this back and forth till you get used to the chain of command. Till you get used to, oh, I got it. Like I normally do saturation, overdrive, compression. That's what I did. You know, that's what I've been doing for all my past projects. So that's what it is that you start getting used to. My brain automatically knows what to go to because of the experience that I have of always going back to my references and things like that. So back to the reference. Hi-hat's a little down. The kick drum. Yeah, the kick drum doesn't have a lot of that high-end thump. It's more of the bottom heavy, the kick. So there's more of like some good bassy stuff from the kick. Do I get that in mind? Hi-hat's really dominant, right? So this is what, I take those things and I bring them over to my thought process. So let's go put an EQ on the hi-hat. Let's thin this out just using an EQ. So I'm shaving even what was there already. I'm taking a little bit more of that off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some crunch to the hi-hat. It's like, wait a second, wait a minute. The hi-hat was already loud to begin with. What are we doing here? Well, adding a little bit of overdrive or distortion or even saturation is going to add some harmonic stuff that when I lower it down helps glue these elements together. And now I can start lowering the volume here of this hi-hat. So what I like using this overdrive for is I just crank the tone, give a little bit more drive while it's down here on the volume. So it's cool. I can bring the volume of the hi-hat down, but adding the saturation, what it does is it brings the stuff back up that I really want from that again. I'm gonna go to this kick drum here. Let's get an EQ. Let's put that on the kick drum. Let's see if we can maybe just take a little bit of... Let's give it a little bit more bump here. So I'm gonna go right here on the bass part. And that part there, that's where I wasn't really feeling or hearing a lot of in the M83 song. And then we've got our snare drum, right? So we'll put an EQ and we'll excite a little bit of that part I took away from the kick. So what am I doing here? I'm just balancing things out. I got a little bit more bump from the kick, and I'm gonna get some brightness here back from the snare. How bright is the reference snare? Right. So the reverse on this snare, that reverse effect, right, it's got a lot of that. So I can fix that with some of the transient stuff. So we'll lessen the sustain, and I'm gonna bring it here so I get. Now that I've bumped things up a little bit, let's go ahead now and add some lower harmonics using the boom here. Now, if you're following along, you're using Logic. Let me just go over here really quick. Let me just look at what you guys are saying. Okay, so now what I'm going to be doing is, okay, I want to add a little bit of, I'm saying if you're on Logic, Fruity Loops, Studio One, stuff like that, here's what it would look like. Get some saturation, and mix a little bit of overdrive with that, some EQing, because we're dampening the EQ, we're just warming this up. And we're adding some harmonic low end here. Yeah, and then what we're gonna do is, now I'm gonna compress it because I've kind of changed the balance a little bit with the EQ and bringing things down. And what I'm looking for here with the compression is now to kind of like help the kick, the snare. You know, if the snare is just coming off a little bit louder, let's just bring the ceiling down a little bit so everybody's kind of more cohesive. You see, when you bring that back, I don't know if you guys can hear the difference, but then the kick starts to dominate more. And those claps there, let's crunch them up. All right, so we're just gonna add a little bit of this. All right, and I'm not looking to do fast compression. I just want something that's gonna give a little bit of, and then we're gonna EQ these guys together. There's where I'm getting. So when I remember the reference, I'm like, there's a lot of like this boxiness that's really kind of really dominant from like the reverse reverbs that's going on. And so I want less of that. I want to match my reference. You see what that did? Like taking the boxiness away from these drums made that snare just feel a little further back, right? So all right, that's cool. And then let's brighten them all up a little bit. And then I'm gonna just give a little bit more low end here like this, just a little beat. So what does it sound like without this? I'm gonna group it. This is the drums before. Let's level match it, right? Because sometimes you might be fooling yourself thinking, well, it's a lot louder, so it's better. So and then all right, there's more excitement there. Now let's add a little bit of depth to this too. So what I want to do is actually add some parallel processing. What's going to help create some depth here is depth, not death. I'm not trying to kill anything. Really quickly, just going through this, I just want to get the drums. I'm going to add a return track here and add a little bit of exaggerated. This is going to probably be, you know, an overdrive plugin and like a digital distortion plugin mixed all the way. And I'm going to send some of that from the drum bus. Okay, and so here is the. And I want to make sure that I'm using an EQ just to kind of. So I'm going to bring this in now. Let's see. Okay, cool. So just having that kind of live there would be cool. Let's color all these green. It kind of helps me a little bit. All right, drums are cool. Now going to the bass. Now I can always go back to my original mix here. Yeah, the drums needed they needed the power, right? So let's go back to the send here. I'm gonna and get really. All right. And I might need to even lower. You notice the difference when I don't have the parallel, right? It's like it gets thinner. So like if I wanted the drums overall to be brighter, I can just send more to the return track. All right, so here's the bass. Let's just kind of get a quick little dive into here, and then what I'm gonna do is just kind of give a moment to answer some questions you guys might have. So got the bass. The bass is, now if I listen to the reference bass here in our verses, and I might need to, I want to add probably just before I go to the bass, a little bit more reverb from, let's get like a bright hall. Let's get like a hall here, not dark, like maybe a main hall. We'll put it on here. And let's send some of the drums to that. What I'm going to do is low cut, give a little bit more highs. And we're going to use an EQ, okay, after the reverb. And I'm going to use a chorus after the reverb. Say, what? Yeah, because I'm going to kind of smear the reverb up a little bit. I want it to be nice and wide. So we're going to get a really cool chorus here. What a difference this does to giving life to these drums. These drums are just kind of really stale. So without the processing and without the sends. They now have dimension. That's what I'm looking for, space. All right, moving on to the bass now. So I think what we've got here is a bass track and then a sub track, which could be pretty hard to hear. So that's what we have to work with. That's fine here. Let me make sure that there's not, if we have a subtrack, let's figure out why we even have a subtrack. Okay. So all right, we're not really seeing a lot of stuff there. And what about the sub bass? Okay. Now, here's what's happening. So it feels like the sub bass is just playing these whole notes, these long notes, as opposed to playing the same pattern and rhythm that the main bass. And so on a production side of things, you might want to consider having both the sub and your bass playing the same rhythmic pattern, because when the one sub sustain note is playing, it anchors and it kind of slows things down a little bit. So you have your, so what's happening is you'll have your sub bass that's just playing these long held notes, and then you have a bass that's just going like this, and this tends to slow it down. So if both are playing at the same rhythm, then it's kind of accenting the low end, and it just gives a little bit more dynamics there. So give me 1 second. Let me just shut off my timer over here, and I'll get right back to it. This would be a great question. I'll transition right now for a couple questions you guys might have. So let me go to the chat really quick. Some questions. We'll get back to this, and then what I want to do is take the time to open up another session that, you know, I want to kind of do a little bit more on this, get this fitting a little more, and yeah. So what are some questions you guys might have right now? I'll take a couple questions before moving forward. Jordan 15396, how do you know when to make stems and start the mixing process? I usually mix as I'm producing, but rather separate the process. Okay, Jordan, I'm going to tackle that in a little bit when I open up another session. All right. Could you guide us through your sends? What are some of your most common settings for sends and stuff? Glad we can see what you did on the sends in the stream. OSRU. Yeah, my sends are usually in the production process. They're a case-by-case basis. But typically I'll have my delays, reverbs, and some parallel stuff. My reverbs for my vocals, reverbs for my musical elements, reverbs for my drums, or whatever it is that may be. I'll have them all on my sends. And oftentimes when I do parallel processing, like what I just did for the drums, I'll often do that as well with sends, or sometimes just create a like an audio effect rack. I rarely do the audio effect dry and thing there. I just like using the sends because I might want to also send another track through that processing as well. Julie Fox, shouldn't EQ plugins be the first one we use? Is it okay to use the EQ after compression? Listen, whatever. Whatever. EQ before compression, sure. EQ after compression, sure. I have both, right? I've got a little EQ happening on some of the drums tracks individually that we were just doing. So I'm EQing some of the drums, and then I'm compressing it, and then I want to go ahead and EQ. You can do both. EQ a little bit, so whatever information is being sent to the compressor, the EQ is allowing and filtering out the things that you don't want sent to the compressor. Then I use an EQ after that to kind of bring some things that the compressor is now emphasizing. So, yeah. When to put bass and kick in a group depends on the genre. Yeah, that can depend on the genre when you want to put your bass and your kick in a group. But oftentimes, if you wanted to say, I want more control of just maybe the kick drum is really sub heavy, and you've got a bass, then you might want to be able to kind of group them. I usually do that when the bass kick drum, and usually like in a lot of EDM genres where the kick drum is really heavy on the bass stuff, maybe like Melbourne house type stuff. Yeah, the kick is just boom, boom, boom. So I'll put the bass with that and just make sure that they're both complementing each other well, compression wise and treatment wise. That's why I would group the two. Great question. Jay Martinez, one time I mixed one of my songs and in my monitors and earphones it sounded great, but when I hear it in my car, the sound was coming just from the front. Why is that? Just panning. You might want to check whether you were exporting them in mono. Oftentimes that could be a very tricky situation that you might export things accidentally in mono, or you converted it into mono by accident afterwards. So check to see if things are being exported as mono. There was, let's see, Sakura is asking, one key question also. I've been also told to balance the tracks, gain staging, before ever doing any comp, EQing, processing rather than that. Yeah, gain staging is important. I even talk extensively in the Breakthrough Mixing Mastering course about gain staging. It is very important, even probably more so in the production recording process. Now, this track, as you can see, even starting off before we did a lot of things, the gain staging was pretty much there because we weren't even near slamming anything close to zero. The purpose would be gain staging is so that everything will then have the ability to be processed through plugins. It won't saturate or distort plugins, sometimes even plugins that are meant to have analog sounding artifacts and algorithms. It will help them kind of get the best sound possible, but gain staging allows you to really get the most. I'm trying to fix all of these groups here. Okay, so gain staging will allow you to get the most out of your headroom. If the kick drum's already at almost 2 dB away from zero, then you have about 2 dB for the rest of the track to kind of fit in there and have all that room to live by. So gain staging can be very important. What is your input on loudness? What is the general loudness you do? Okay, let's talk about that a little bit down the road with mixing. Let's just jump on this and can you repeat what you said about the sub bass and the bass? I often have a sub playing here. Okay, let me transition over to this session really quickly. By the way, am I going too fast? Is anything that I've covered so far been helpful? Let me know, guys. For those of you just joining us right now, we are in the middle of a workshop here, mixing and mastering, and I'm currently mixing a Beat Academy members session, kind of just going quickly, and some of the things that I want to do to shape the overall dimension here. So is it going too fast? Okay. All right, guys, my goal is really to help you leave this workshop with some helpful tools that can help you shape your mixes the way you want them to, okay? Okay, great. Let's go back to the bass issue. Everybody's asking about the sub bass. Here we have a group. We have bass 1, which is more the melodic bass, and then you have a sub bass here. Let's just do this sub so you guys can see that. And we'll call this top bass. So it looks like this sub bass, I can't really hear it though, but it looks like it's just sustained, right? So if I look at the waveform, yeah, I mean, it could be playing the same rhythm, but a lot of the sub is, you're not going to be able to hear it. But as you can see here, top 1 has some space in there. The sub is just continuously one note being held, and that can tend to drag things down. So what I can do here is let's create some sidechain compression to the, maybe the sub bass here. And I'll probably compress this over to the kick drum. So we'll get the source, excuse me, drum bus, the LD kick. Let's increase the gain a little bit. And let's bring the threshold down. All right, and this is just going to help create movement. Now you're not going to hear anything because this is some really low sub. So, I mean, I'm talking about 40, 35 hertz. So let me just back this down and let me see if I can get as much beef as I can from the top bass. I don't have much to work with here. So what I'm going to do is, I want the top bass. I'm going to have a lot of top bass. Give me a lot of the low end. I'm going to show you a reason why. Okay, now you can use, we can use the drum bus plugin on this bass too, and I can just use a little bit of saturate. I'm not going to use that, but I'm going to use the boom to add some harmonic and open up the decay. And look, you'll see the difference here. And let me just take that compressor from the sub. Let's put it on the bass bus in general. So it's sidechaining both the sub here. And you're like, why are you doing all of that low end addition when you have a sub? Well, I'm just going to bring the sub down because it's not really impacting me because of the sustain note. So I'm just going to have the main top bass. I want to produce some of the extra low end, because that way it'll move with the rhythm. And so what we're going to do now is duplicate this track, and I'm going to call this distort bass. So we've got, I'm going to color this one just so that it's kind of helpful here. The brown one will be distorted bass. We just duplicated it, and let's go ahead and add, let's start with an amp amplifier. And let's just that's a little too gritty, but what we're trying to do is just get rid of all the low end now that we're adding. Maybe the boost is good. Okay, so now layer that with this one. helps give more definition there. Now let's put this with the drums. Now, let's widen up this bass. So create another, let's get, not another aux, but let's get, well, yes, for this, I'm going to use an auxiliary return. So I create an auxiliary return. I'm going to put a chorus right on this return, and we're going to go 100% wet here, okay? And then we're going to make sure that on this chorus, I'm going to put an EQ before the chorus to take away some of the low end, all right? And we're going to send this bass to this return track here, so that we're wetting that bass. Now, why did I do a return track? I use a return track in this instance where I have, because I didn't want to put the chorus on directly to the bass bus, because then it's going to wash away all that low end treatment we just enhanced. So instead, keep the dry low bass that we've just created in the middle, and then add a return track to add the width, because we're going to cut the low end from that guy. So it's only focusing on some of the low mids and some of those artifacts. That's what I want to spread apart on my mix. All right, so that's going to be helpful there, and we can just maybe increase the warmth here. Now, I don't have a lot of that high-end, like, chorusy stuff that I do here in the reference, right? So I might want to increase some more of the distorted bass. So that's what I'm doing. What do I want more of? I want more presence. I'm kind of locked in. I don't have that much to work with here, so I'm going to have to do that by duplicating. And then going to this bass bus here. And now we can just kind of shape this up a little. This is without the chorus. So it just gives some subtle width there. And let's increase that. If I want it, let's see what the sub. I mean, I just can't hear, and I'm gonna switch over to my the big ones. But I think for right now, where I'm at, I'm liking the balance between these two. So now how now is the relationship between the bass and my reference in their section here to mine. Yeah, so the bass isn't really that sub heavy, right? So I personally probably would have even done the sound design a little bit different if I was going for that M83 type of bass. So I might have to, you know, wash this up a little bit more. And I'll just probably bring this down, just a little sidechain here. Now here is where I want to bring the dynamics of the bass, control them a little bit. So let's use a compressor to do that. I want this. And then we're gonna go back down. All right, now let's go to these chords here. Now what I'm doing here is, as I introduce a new element, oh wait, you guys aren't even, I am so sorry. So you're like been staring at my face this whole time. Well, yeah. Oh gosh. Well, that's definitely some good ear training. Totally my bad here. I'm still getting used to the new setup, so totally forgive this, guys. So everybody's like, yep, got the ear training, so you should be. Let me kind of run back a little bit of what I was doing here. I'm so sorry, guys. Complete, utter fail. What I've done was I put an EQ on the bass bus here, and I'm just now kind of just narrowing in some of these frequencies, like this low mid part here. Just because the nature of the sound of the bass, it's resonating, it's a little weird. So once I find that, I'm gonna go ahead and reduce some of that. And just balance out the volume too. Is like, this feels about the same balance as I would get from the reference. And we're getting the width from that auxiliary that we've just done. I've just incorporated the chords here. So with the chords, let's just brighten them up. I'm going to add some saturation. Saturation is just a great tool to kind of help glue all these elements together. I'm going to use the Ableton Live Saturator, give a little bit of drive, and then bring down the output. And then let's use some reverb here that we're sending the drums to, which is on A. You know, I'm curious to see, like, what would just the bass sound like all the way filtered out. So I'm trying to find that little... Yeah, that section there, okay? Saturation and adding some of that. Let's add a little bit of repeat sound design steps. Yeah, so chords, leads. I want to kind of go quickly a little bit, add some adjustments. I want to open up a session where I've done some producing, walk you through there. I want to listen to some of our listeners' mixes. So all that's going to be entailed in here. So hang on tight. How's everybody doing? Let me check back with the chat. Sorry about that. I get zoned out here. But all right. What I'm trying to do is create dimension here with this mix. That's what I'm going after. I'm going back and forth with the reference. So the most important thing is, what's the end goal here you're trying to reach and accomplish with your tracks? Give yourself a reference so you have something to gauge things by. All right. Sometimes processing things as a group can be helpful to get the overall sound that you're looking for that group, as we've done with the drums. And then basses here, really duplicating the bass. So we've duplicated the bass, added an amplifier distortion here. And I'll solo just that, just to get a specific. Just a little more of that artifact I want through into the basses here. All right, the chords are fine. I'm gonna add a delay. What do I have on return track B? So we have delay here on return track B. Let's use a short delay, right? Maybe every eighth note. Let's send this to that. And let's filter, let's ping pong that. So we're getting it left and right, and we're gonna filter. Now what's cool is, a great trick is to slightly change the timing on one side of the delay when they're in sync. because then what you've got is this movement left and right, and that's going to help create more width. Almost kind of like the bass just really blanketed over it, because that romp 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 is, it's kind of just, it's just taking all my attention away. So we'll do that. We added some delay, some reverb, maybe just sparkle up the chords a little more, a little high end here. Okay, let's introduce the leads. Are the leads playing here? Do I have any? Yeah, let's solo them in. So then let's add reverb that we have on the drums. Let's listen to the leads a little. So let me get a little more gain by adding some saturation. I'm going to add saturation to pretty much all these channels here. Saturator, put it on the lead. And I'm going to go from analog clip to maybe soft sine. This is going to give me a little bit more, this is going to give me more crunch. Let's try medium curve. That's good there. And this plugin erosion is really cool in adding some noise. And some width is going to come from directly placing the chorus on here. Now, I noticed that he's got, I think it's the same sound. Same sound. Okay, so this one is accenting, right? So this one here I'll call accent. And this one will be main. So you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this chorus and just place that on the accent and really wet that up. So there's actually some difference between the accented notes and the regular ones. So let's check this out. Yeah, so then it feels a little different when those notes start playing off of one another. Let me see how I'm doing so far. Let's go to the original. Just solo the original. So here's the original. Here's my mix. What do you guys think so far? And what are some of the differences that you're noticing from the adjustments I've made to the original mix? Can you let me know in the chat? I'll give some time for the chat to catch up, and I want to just answer some questions you might have. Here's the original once again. Let's listen to the original. Here's my mix. Right, so the lead is up front. There's more definition with the drums. Okay, great. And we've got this guitar track in here. You know, it is what it is. And again, let's get some saturation here. And it's already distorted, so why add the saturation? Because remember, I want this to start gluing together with the other elements in this. Okay. So let's add some delay. That's helping create the delay and reverb. So Alpha Teode is saying, for me, somehow each and every instrument is clear, due less to clashing frequencies, I think. Also, the sounds are louder overall. Way clearer. There's more depth. Yeah, and we haven't even changed much of the volumes. You can see I'm just giving some context here, just adjusting this, balancing out. So we've got the guitar running some delay. How about we run with some of that, a little bit of the width that we created here with this return track, and some reverb. But I'm going to actually place reverb directly onto this bus here. All right, and I'm going to use the hybrid reverb. So I'll place it right on there. What this is going to do is this is going to help kind of send it further in the back. And what's cool is going to this shimmer mode adds an octave higher on top of that, because I can adjust the pitch here. Oh, there you go. There you go. It was off by just a half step, and that was really weird. So that's really cool there. Let's widen this up stereo-wise. Let's bring this with everybody else. And we have some atmosphere track here. I might want to separate that little arpeggiated lead. Again, this is accenting. Okay. So let's warm these guys up a little bit with, this time I'm going to use overdrive on the actual bus. Just a little bit of that, and just EQing this to that's that boxy stuff that we were cutting from the drum. So I don't mind if this is going to live and give a little bit more of that. And then we'll just cut some of the end here so that the airiness of the chords and stuff take more precedence there. Let's give that delay here. And what's cool is let's add movement by using a flanger. Flangers are a great way to just create a lot of movement here. So you know what? I'd rather put the flanger on the chords. Here's the chords. Yeah. Why on the chords? Well, the chords are stationary. They're just staying right. So they're more sustained, and so the flanger is going to help move those more, as opposed to the lead that was going. So there's movement there on the line. Having the flanger on the chords just helps move them a little bit more. And you know what would be really cool, and what would help this thicken up, is let's take this chords. I think these are kind of the same. Okay. So let's take this chord here. Let's duplicate this. And where is it? So this will be down. And we're going to wrap this up with a couple things I'm going to put on the master bus for like mastering. But let's give this another color here. We'll give it purple. so you guys can follow along. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a whole octave lower. I'm going to warp this here, and we're going to go over to Complex Pro and just go 12 semitones down. So going back to, so let me solo this. Let's see what this sounds like maybe from Complex Pro to Complex. Sometimes changing these around can help. That's better. So what I've done is I've taken this layer of synth chords. Let's play from here. This is without it. Now look how thicker everything's going to be. Now, there's only one track on this guitar bus, so instead of it getting cluttered in the way, why don't we pan him a little to the right? And some of these other guys that we've been messing with, I'm going to pan this little arpeggiator thing here. I'm going to pan this a little to the left. All right, so really quickly, let's compare now where we're at with the original. Here's the original. What do you guys think so far? I'm just looking at the I think the claps are a little weak in the mix. Okay. Now again, just because we're going through this quickly, I can bring this up, but now I'm going back and forth with my original mix or the original state of that, and then going back here and then, you know, kind of getting the definition. But what I was going for here is more of a, hey, is there depth? Is there clarity? Or things, is there more space? Because I think that was originally lacking from the original mix. Did he just adjust panning at all? Well, let's get into panning. Why didn't I do a lot of panning here? Because a lot of these elements are already stereo. They have a lot of stereo stuff going on. So it was more of just creating the depth with some delay and reverb that creates a lot of those aspects that I'm looking for. All right. Yeah, Super Forbes is saying it's going from 2D to 3D. That's what I was trying to go for. All right, so let's add some of, wow, this is interesting. I guess they updated 11 and they added this thing on the master. Okay, I don't know what's this. Okay. Master fader. Let's do a little bit of some stuff here. So let's saturate the overall mix. Let's give this a nice warm glue here. I'm going to do a little bit of saturation here, analog clip, and I'm going to kind of file this into some of the mastering aspect, or not typical mastering, but let's put some of this on the master bus to kind of help get this level wise where we need it. Okay, I'm going to do this. Let's do the master fader. Then I'm going to answer some questions you guys might have. Then I want to just kind of talk about some main principles to carry into when you are producing and how do you carry over mixing what you've produced. By the way, I go in extreme more depth and a lot slower pace, and actually at your own pace, in the breakthrough mixing and mastering course. So if you want more information take advantage that it is currently on sale right now at half price. So be sure to jump on that. It's the link below. You can visit beatacademy.com/mixing to take advantage of that. All right, let's go. We've got here a little bit of drive. And I'm gonna do a little bit of tube. Let's add some dynamic tube. Some warm tube or hot driven tape. That's cool too. That's a preset here, and it's a little too much. So what I'll do is bring the drive back down and mess around with the dry and wet. How about with just these two alone, can we hear a difference? Yeah, the bottom end lifted up a little bit, so that was really cool. That's what I was going for. So we're gonna add a little bit of that saturation here. Let's use our EQ. We're using the EQ8 here, and again, I'm emphasizing just the stock plugins here because you can get so much done here with just using the stock plugins. So just thinning out the overall frequency mix here. I want to focus on the problematic frequencies of the overall mix, right? And that tends to be a lot of this low mid section here, because when I boost it, you'll notice it becomes more apparent. So just even a little bit here, when I dip or cut from this section, you know what you tend to hear more of? This and this. And that it acts as a seesaw. So the more you're cutting from one aspect, the more lopsided the other part of the frequency spectrums become more noticeable. So you can actually give more highs by taking away some more lows. That's one thing you want to implement and understand. I'm not trying to have this EQ correct all the issues, because if I'm finding out, man, it's just still sharp on one thing, I can go to that specific element in the mix and dial back that frequency. But for right now, just kind of... Right, so then let's open up number 2. Maybe just a little bit more low end. We can just increase the Q a little bit more like that. Then let's go ahead and bring a little. Let's just open up the highs. That's cool. It really cleans it up. And then just I've got one more thing that's just kind of getting to me, and this guy here. So it's cool. We can go in our headphone mode and in that headphone mode, I can hear what are the elements that are really at play here. This is going to be really helpful for your ear training in the whole mixing process. So if you're taking notes, here's what you want to take note of. Okay, I'm going to solo this frequency here. We're only going to be listening in on the elements that are playing and that are in this space. What elements do you hear the most? So you hear the bass, that boom, 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 and then you also hear a little bit of the solo part, right? The guitar. So you know what I can do is I can go to the guitar now and saying, hey, why don't we take a little bit away of that low mid section? Will that take away the life of the guitar if I take that much out? No, it's pretty good there. So, right. So, yeah, so guitar and the bass, right. So now let me go back over here And let's do this again. I'm hearing less of that guitar solo. And so now it's not becoming muddy, or they're not fighting each other there that much. Cool. All right. Now let's compress a little bit. We'll use the glue compressor here. And I want just a slow attack, really quick release. Keep it at 4:1 ratio. What we're trying to do is just create the ceiling to go down so that the overall dynamics, it's going to kind of help the compressor really helps you notice the reverbs and the delays that we have taken the time to create. So let's just highlight these so far and see what we've done so far here to the mix. You let me know what are some of the differences you're hearing when we take these off. Now that little clap here, let's send some of that delay to the clap and give some space to that so it feels further in the back of the mix when it happens. Okay, let's go to that part here. Where do we hear the clap? So right here. Probably not enough, so you know what we need to do is insert a reverb on this clap. That helps. Now that gives more space, pushes it to the back. Now we've got some compression, EQ. Let's add a little bit of width here. I'm going to use the utility plugin for that. Actually, even better, let's get another EQ. EQ 8. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set this EQ, instead of from stereo, to mid-side mode, okay? And what we're going to do is hit the side mode, and let's just focus in on information that's going to the side, meaning the side, and then you have the mid that's going to be in the middle here. Yeah, it's going to be hard to hear, but I think I want to shave some of that off and then increase. There's a lot of the reverb stuff going on here, so let's give some more of that to be present. And let's go over to, I think it would be dynamics, a limiter here. And yeah, ceiling, maybe about like 75. All right, let's compare now. Let's A/B where we're at to the original. Here's the original mix. Okay, there's something I think I'm missing, or I either have off, and it's I think it might be yeah, so I'll bring this up a little. So what do you guys think? Where are we at? What are some of the major differences you're seeing with the original? Here's the original mix. do you get a sense of depth here? Does it feel like it's a little bit wider? That's what we're going for, right? I just wanted more depth and clarity. What do you guys think? More definition, Lewis Galvin saying more definition. Far up, this is the difference between all my mixes and my references tracks right there. Fuller, more in depth, thicker drums, full and bright, so much room, space, clarity, depth, yes, wow, punchy, clear, depth, wider, bigger. So, all stock plugins, nothing crazy, utilizing the space and creating the depth with parallel processing on the auxiliary returns. What I wanted out of this was, how can I make this less one-dimensional? I felt that the original mix was a little bit too narrow. Everything was just straight in your face here. I'm going to transition. I'll be sure to go back to the DAW. So everything was just kind of in your face, very narrow, very stiff there. And now what I wanted to do is create some space, define some movement there. So we added flanger on the chords. We put some reverb and delay. We also widened up the bass, but we kept the mono, right? I kind of got away with some of the high-end stuff from the bass. So what we were able to do was create definition. And that's really, really important. And I wanted to utilize just using the stock plugins that we have available, so that you can see, A, yes, it can be done, and B, it's just a matter of just kind of knowing what you're aiming for. And the big part of that is using our reference track. So the M83 Midnight City was a helpful tool for me to gauge, hey, what am I going for? What's a reference point that I can go for? Level matching that and doing all this stuff. So I'm going to open this up for some Q&A. I think we're a little over time here. I'm so sorry it took so long. But what I want to do is, I know I wanted to open up a session, talk about producing as you mix. So let's get some questions about that. I want to get some time to go through some of the Beat Academy member mixes really quickly. We'll pick a couple of those. But let's take some time to answer some questions that you guys might have. And maybe what I can do is talk on some of the key components of mixing while you're producing. So, any questions? I'm going to go ahead. Good XJ is asking, do this again with a hip-hop track next. As a matter of fact, in the mixing mastering course, I actually break down several different types of genres of mixing. So some of you might saying, yeah, when I watch mixing tutorials, they're really just mixing genres I don't really make. Well, I cover, mixing, pop tracks, hip-hop, aggressive, more rock-centered stuff, ballads. I didn't even go into mixing, EDM-ish elements in there as well. So there is a different approach to specific genre, specific mixing, but we cover the fundamentals. We cover all, if you're just getting started with making music and you have no idea what to go or what steps to take when it comes to mixing your stuff, this course covers every aspect of the fundamentals. And if you're seasoned in mixing, here are some great ways for you to take your next step forward. So the Breakthrough Mixing and Mastering course covers all that, and we are currently opening it for half price for the next couple of days only. So if you're just joining us, thank you for joining us. If you are, if you're a Beat Academy member but you haven't watched the course yet, now's the time to jump on the course. So let me get to your questions really quickly. Okay, Jordan Mars is saying it's even impressive to use the stock plugins. Thank you. Okay, should you go easy on effects in producing phase and leave it for mixing? Should you go easy on the producing phase and leave it more mixing? Great question. The producing stuff is really all about allowing more of the sound design, because when you're currently working on, I'm going to bring up a mix now and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. When you're producing, you're in the process of shaping the sounds to the way that you like them. So when you're working on drums, you're sound selecting. What drum kits, what kick drum, what snare, what am I using? All of that is part of the writing process, because each sound that you're triggering and you're using is inspiring you to move on to the next sound that you're going to be selecting. So when you compress it, when you distort it, when you add your guitar through an amp, through your next door neighbor's calculator, and you're getting this kind of sound, that's all sound design. And so it's almost as you're mixing as you go when you're producing. the reason sometimes you want to step in, or somebody else to step in and help you with the mixing process, is because they're getting a fresh new perspective when sometimes you can get what we call tunnel vision. So one thing that can be very helpful and beneficial when you're writing and producing your own things, and by the way, I go in depth in the course here. So here's a session I just opened up. This is called, this is a session for an artist that I'm developing, or it's a group, it's a duo, and it's called Cloud9. This is more, let me take it from the chorus here. Okay. So here, everything, the drums, right? All the aspects here are, I'm shaping as I'm producing. Now, the goal of that is balancing out, not spending hours and hours on the tweaking element, and yet getting to the writing process. So there's this balance. So what you have to focus in on is, you know, if you see yourself, you're spending more time on sound designing than you are developing and arranging the song, then you know it's time, you got to move on. So if you're in a 4-bar rut and you're like, man, I haven't really gotten out of here because I'm tweaking and I'm not really liking the sound, then no amount of tweaking is going to save you from, because you got to move on and get the song done. You got to do the arrangement. So oftentimes what I'll end up doing is I'll just get a basic skeleton going, write the song, and normally around the time where I'm tracking or recording the vocals or doing stuff or even putting the melody stuff down there, I start to find the balance and blend. Here's a helpful tip. What I would do sometimes is, let's say I've got a rough sketch or an idea in my session. I will bounce that out. I will actually export that and then bring it into the session. So I would create an audio track. So here's an audio track, right? We're going to put that all the way on the top. Okay, put it all the way on the top. And this will be the original mix. And this is the current state that I'm currently have my session in. Export it, put it in there. Save the session under Mix A or Mix 1, whatever, that you're starting a whole new project in the mix. Now what you want to do is start inputting your reference track and do exactly what we've just been doing in this workshop. Walk through the steps. Where am I currently at right now and comparing to my reference? Where do I want to go? Then you can go back and forth to the original mix here and gauge more or less, oh, okay, it's getting more definition, it's getting more where I'm headed. And so in here, I'm not bouncing and messing with stems. So what I tend to do is once I have like the sound pretty much there, like a mellotron here, this is all sound design. This is all part of the process of like, I need all these plugins here to shape the sound itself. I can then freeze it, flatten it, print it, because I know I'm committing to it. And I think that's going to be really helpful for you to commit. So you create another session where you call it your mix, and you have your session before it, which is your production songwriting session. And that's a good way to draw a clear line to say, okay, I am now in mixing mode, and it's going to give me the clear focus to kind of define what it is that I want to do. The problem that we tend to fall into is once I have this thing here, we're always in this endless cycle of tweaking. Well, what if that's not the right patch? Well, I got to do this. Well, I got to do that. I guarantee the moment you draw the line and commit your sounds, the better you're going to be off in mixing and defining the depth that you're looking for in your tracks. Does that make sense in the chat room? You can let me know in the chat. How do I make my instrument sound good in mono? More often than not, my music sounds nothing like what it actually is when I listen to them on my phone speakers. Right, so I would use a mono plugin. If you're using Ableton Live, you can use the utility plugin on the master fader, set that to mono, and then you'll get a clear glimpse as what the mix is going to currently sound like in mono, and then just kind of use that in balance. In the mixing mastering course, I go in detail of how and what you're trying to get from your mono mixes. We walk through mono mixing and what is it that you're specifically looking for when mixing in mono. Gabby says, I really needed to hear that. Well, I needed to hear that. Yeah, I think the issue that we find in producing and composing and recording and songwriting from mixing is we never give ourselves a clear line. We never take the time to draw the line saying, okay, here's my file, my project. I'm done writing. I'm going to export it. And now I'm going to create a mixing session. And I'm going to treat this session just like I would if I was sending somebody stems. Okay? And I think that's going to help you guys commit more to knowing what I got is what I got. Now I need to just define 5 problems with my current mix that I need to solve with what I have on hand. You look like Calvin Harris. Are you related? No, we are not. I'm new to this and mixing. Does mixing course tackle vocals? Yes, absolutely. We tackle in vocals. That's obviously covered in there. A lot of the genres that we do have, that we cover, have vocals in them. What studio monitors would you recommend for mixing and mastering? Honestly, the studio monitor situation isn't really half the battle. The half the battle is your room. And so if you can get some good pair of near field monitors, whether they're micro louds or, you know, folk house, and whatever it is that you can get your hands on, karaokes, whatever your budget recommends, your references are going to be the key to getting success with your mixes, because your room. You can spend thousands of dollars on speakers and realize that your room is lying to you regardless. So when you hear what you're getting from your speakers is not necessarily what's coming out, because your room is tweaking with reflections and things like that. So you have to be careful with placing all your eggs in the studio monitor basket. Realize that, get your ears used to whatever speakers you're currently using or whichever headphones, but be mindful that reference tracks are going to be your saving grace and helping you understand to translate what you're trying to get from your mixes from where you're currently at in your mixes. Excuse me. What do you think about mix assistants or AI from like Neutron and Isotope? I think they're great tools, but I'd rather you learn how to fish than somebody handing you fish. In the sense of, if I can train you how to catch the fish, you'll be able to feed yourself days on end, rather than saying, just here's a fish, and then you're dependent on me to always provide you that nourishment. So get understanding. I would even encourage you to understand what those AI elements are doing to your mixes. And yes, they're definitely amazing. The fact, and you know, it's numbers and ones and zeros that allow you to analyze what's going on, and smart EQs and all these things. These are really great. But I think you'll get more benefit from AI mixing tools when you truly understand the foundations of mixing yourself. Because then what you're doing is, okay, I like what the AI is doing, but it could really use some help tweaking here. And you would know how to navigate towards the problematic spots that the AI isn't covering. Does that make sense? Supremo is asking, how do you approach layering bass sounds together in a group or melodic elements like super saws and have them fit together and not feel so separate? I think we covered it just recently, so if you just jumped in, you want to go back a little bit on super saws or just bass in general. But like if I go back to here, in this session, I'll have an 808. And I'll have another, no, yeah, it's just the 808 here. I don't have any other. So right now, this would be the kick drum and the 808. In this case, I want the 808 to live all heavily sub-bass, and the kick's just going to be more the thump. But when I'm layering two basses, oh, you know what? Here's a great example. At the end of the song, we have two basses going on. So I've got two layered in the sense where just like what we did in the workshop, I've got one erasing a lot of the low end, capturing a lot more of the highs and the grittiness there. And I got one focusing on less of the highs and more of the low end. So that's how I balance those two out. Okay, can you touch on summing? What is it, and is it necessary? Summing Okay, well, summing is essentially when we group things, when we route several tracks over to one destination, we are summing. So it's just like an additional problem. 1 plus 1, the sum of that is 2, right? So multiple tracks, when you either group them or route them to a bus, you're summing all of them into one destination that then you could process entirely. So just to give you a visual here, we've got all the drums in the drum bus here. So all of these drums here in this color are being summed into this drum bus, meaning that I can then add overall compression to all the elements. And so summing is very important, and it's a great aspect to mixing because you can individually tweak just what we did earlier in this workshop, and then you can group them together so that not only did you individually tweak some of those elements, but then you went ahead and adjusted them all together, such as what we did with the drums, where I boosted a little bit more of the highs of the snares. I added some more low end B for the kick, but now we sum them together, and then I can just do overall processing, add some saturation to both of them, get some grit, all that, compress both of them together. Sometimes we fall in the rut of like, I don't know why my stuff is lacking depth. Try summing or grouping some elements together and doing a little bit of processing, a little bit of saturation to help glue those elements in that sum together. This is specifically very much so with vocals. So here I have an all vocal bus. So that means I'm summing all of my vocal tracks to that 1-2 track there. And here I'll have like all the lead vocals going to a lead vocal bus, all of the ad-libs, all the background vocals going to a vocal bus, but then they all get summed into one vocal bus. The reason being is that I can then treat all the vocals together with a little bit of processing. So a little bit goes a long way. Did that make sense for you, Gabby? Just want to make sure if you can let me know in the thing. All right, I just want to, so we're going to wrap up our time together here, heading over to our, let's see, let's head over to some of our members. We'll do about 3 songs here that I want to just check out and see, and just kind of give a little bit of feedback here. And I'm short on time. I apologize, but what I'll do is please just move. If you're a Beat Academy member, or if you're just joining us on YouTube and you're like, hey, how do I do this? How do I submit my songs onto this? Then you definitely want to check out joining Beat Academy. Visit beatacademy.com for more info. These are Beat Academy members that are able to upload their songs and stuff. So what I want to do is when I return, I'm heading out of town, but when I get back, I'm going to schedule our next listening session. So please add this to the queue, and I'll dedicate more time to listening to that as well. So let's check out Live Nomi.
I see you dancing close to me. I feel your endless energy. No one will be there to stop you now. Why don't you tell me it's all you wanna do? Why don't you tell me it's all you wanna be? The night is young, tonight we're one. See the stars, I wanna take you there from my. I'll face you, I swear, you'll be the one that lights my sky.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it seems like this was exported in mono. Let me just double check with another song, make sure there's nothing wrong with my system really quick. Right, okay, so this one's in stereo, and hopefully those who are watching, you can hear the difference. So, hey, that's a big thing there. Exporting this in mono, maybe accidentally, is causing this to just be, everything's right there, and it's hard to get the depth and the definition stereo width-wise that you might be looking for. Now, taking that in consideration, it's going to be hard. Maybe you do have the reverb, you have some delays already present that can help spread that. So I would definitely like to hear this re-exported, reprinted in stereo rather than mono, and that would give me a better grasp as to help you. But a couple of things I did notice, and this is for everybody watching, and this is what mixing in mono should be helping you understand. Now, what I'm hearing here in this mono mix, so this actually works out well, is, okay, balance-wise, what am I getting from my mono mix? Why am I mixing in mono? What's the ultimate purpose here? Well, what's the balance? What's the ultimate balance that we're looking for? So in mono, everything is just summed up here, and now I'm looking for the definition. Is the kick drum way too loud? Is the vocal present? Are the guitars louder? There you can get more of the basis of volume, like who's fighting who. Do I hear anything? Does anything disappear when I go into mono? And I only hear it when I go into stereo. If it's disappearing in mono, chances are you're not going to hear it when it goes to, you play it on your Alexa, or sometimes in the car, it'll just get lost. So you want to be able to hear and evaluate what's louder, what's taking precedence here. So going back.
I tell you there's no.
So yeah, the vocal seems a little bit timid, a little farther back. So in this mono mix, I would bring the vocal a little bit farther. You can help it too. Mono also helps identify when you're doing doubling on your vocals, when you're out of time. So if you got vocals and you're doubling your vocals, you're stacking vocal tracks, and you go to mono, you can hear like, wow, I don't know why, but it just seems like they're just a little out of place. It's hard to identify that sometimes when you hard pan your vocal left, your right, because they're like, oh wow, it sounds wild. But when you put it in mono, you can definitely tell, wow, these vocals are off time. So I need to go in there, make sure that my double vocals are right in time with the lead vocal. That way it doesn't like feel like it's a bit sloppy and falling all out of the place. So that's one thing I would definitely do and check in on right there. All right, so let's go to a couple other ones here. All right, let's do this one. Wait, I'm sorry, number what? I'm trying to do. There we'll do these two over here. I have to say, Villeniouseblue, just hearing some of your progress from, you know, the past several months that you've become a Beat Academy member, what huge improvement. I think this is by far the best thing you've ever put out. The best thing you've done in our community. Great job. As far as, like, you know, you've got the arrangement. This is really good for me. So I don't know if it's the mixes, the output's a little low. Once again, that could totally be on my end. All the elements are there. Now, this would probably be, you know, going back to on the mastering aspect. I know it really didn't get depth in mastering, and we can go more into the loudness stuff. But guys, I'm sorry, I should have done better on the time here. Maybe we'll do a continuing a live workshop to continue from just mastering alone. Maybe that's what we can do. So here, I think this is now just more of like, what can we shine, what can we brighten up, what can we clean up on the mastering aspect. I just want to make sure that the low end isn't getting too muddy here, but I think all around great job. I think the vocals has enough space with the reverb and everything's living in its right place there. So all in all, man, just great job with this in general. I'm just blown away with the actual production because, you know, hearing you since you first became a member and hearing what you've got now, wow, just tremendous growth. So I'm super excited about that, and that's really awesome. Let's play this one over here. We'll go with the original. So I just want to talk on the vocal stuff there. I think that's really kind of right now currently the weakest link there. So just from hearing this, what I would immediately go to with the vocal is maybe just clean up a lot of the low mids that I'm getting in from that local, thin it out a little bit, and then as the vocal becomes thin, as you start to move, as you start to take away some low end from a vocal's EQ. Well, actually, let me go to the DAW and I could show you here what I'm talking about. So as you go to, like, let's say a vocal's EQ, you can thin things out a little bit. So I'm hearing just above my ear just a little bit more of this low mid section. So I would even do just a little bit of this and then bring another and keep this like at a low shelf and just kind of like reduce just a little bit like that. That's kind of what I'm hearing that I would want to do your vocal, and that's going to thin it out. Like I mentioned earlier in the workshop, when you're taking away from this section, it's going to automatically make this part of the frequency stand out more. So that'll help there, and then just brighten up the vocal a little bit so that it can actually have more presence and give a little bit more depth there with some of the reverb and delay. A slapback delay could be really helpful to create some width there with the vocal. I think that could be very useful there. Having the vocal just sit a little bit more and excite more in the mix in the main part there. Yeah, production stuff's getting really good. So yeah, let's have that vocal, just sit a lot clearer in the mix there. I think would be good. All right, let's go to one more here. I think similar to what we covered earlier in this workshop, as you start to define, I think that this vibe is so cool. But let's start creating some definition here with like the kick and the sub bass, a little bit more definition, so the drums start to help a little dynamically move things along with the track. So this is where a lot of the EQing away some of the low end from the kick drum and letting the kick just be a little bit more thumpy, and let the sub, that bass you have going on, let that kind of live predominantly in the low end. And then, yeah, and just kind of, maybe probably having the reference point there could be really helpful, having a reference track to gauge more or less where you're heading into. Yeah, I think those are some really cool cool things to implement. So this is all again about creating and carving out space with just your EQ with some of the elements that you have on hand. So I think that could be really, really helpful. Going back to the first project that we worked on. So I know we didn't get that much time to dive into a lot of the members' music, but I want to save time in our next listening session to do that. So for those of you who are joining us in YouTube land, thank you so much for joining. We're wrapping up this workshop. So before we do, I just kind of want to recap some of the essentials that we covered. Once again, let's listen to the original mix here that we started off with. Okay, this is our original mix. So we've got more definition, we've got that, and so if you were just able to carve that out simply just by knowing what it is that we're looking for, and that's where the help of the reference track came into play. I know we covered a lot, and for some of you who are just jumping on board, you're like, what is going on? You feel like you just walked in on the end of a movie. Don't worry about that. This will be up on YouTube for you guys to go back and revisit, and any pointers that I covered that were beneficial and helpful for you, you could revisit. And that's one thing I want to make sure. Was this helpful? Was this helpful? Was this workshop helpful? We'll wrap it up with some Q&As. But most importantly, was anything learned in our time together that can be encouraging or helping you with, were there any aha moments? Were there things like, oh, okay, that's cool, I want to try that in my mix? Will Joyson has got a lot of good ideas where to go next. Thank you, Ivan. Suns360, appreciate the info and sharing. I'm super excited to apply this stuff in my production. Farah Fertazzi, absolutely helpful. Thank you. Jordan, some great takeaways. Yeah, honestly, I learned a lot. Daniel Jr., wow, amazing. So many small changes, but in the end, the final result is huge, overwhelming. I have the feeling that my first experiences with Ableton sounded horrible, but can improve. Great. Well, I'm really glad this is beneficial. And obviously, we could go so much more in depth, but I already did that for you. I've created a whole course, Breakthrough Mixing and Mastering. You can find the link below in the description box. You can visit beatacademy.com/mixing. It's right now half off, like crazy, stupid deal. So it's half off for the next remaining days. If you're watching the replay or just tuning in, jump on that before it's too late. We go completely in depth. And if you're saying, well, I'm brand new to mixing, maybe I should wait a little while, I cover all the fundamentals and I cover all the advanced stuff. Learning years of experience of producing music and working with mixing engineers such as Jimmy Douglas and many more guys in the industry. So yeah, it's in there. We cover multiple genres of music. Vocal production stuff is covered in there as well. Mixing vocals and everything's in there as well. So a lot of stuff is covered in there that I just didn't have the time or bandwidth to get into in our workshop. So hopefully what I just shared with you on this workshop was just kind of a primer, helping you kind of see, oh, okay, yeah, I get the concepts. And I do go in depth talking about what does mixing while producing look like. If you're working and producing, how do you go about mixing? What's that fine balance between producing, writing, recording, and mixing? So the course covers that. So you definitely want to check out that course. Someone's asking, can we do the course at our own time or are there fixed timings? The course is absolutely done at your pace. Whichever pace you want, all the information's already there. Although it's not overwhelming, it's all delivered in multiple modules that you have access to. It lets you keep track of their progress, where you're at throughout the course, and you can always go right back to where you left off of, in the midst of your busy schedule. So, and you can rewatch it over and over again. And I'm always tweaking. I'm always adding. This is actually Mixing Mastering 2.0. I've just recently adjusted the course, and you get access to any tweaks and any things that get added to that as well. You can also download sessions and stems so you can follow along with what we're doing so that you develop the ear training to understand how you can implement those changes in practical ways in your own DAW. I cover Logic. Someone's asking, is this just all in Ableton? No. The course covers mixing in both Logic, Ableton, Studio One, and all the principles can easily be applied across, you know, Fruity Loops, Pro Tools, whatever it is that you're using. All right. Is the course a one-time payment? Yeah, one-time payment for the course. And if you are already a Beat Academy member, you have the ability to bundle all the courses together. That's a pro membership there for Beat Academy members. But yes. And if you're looking for accountability, and if you're looking for the community to help you, come alongside you to help you build and take your next step forward, and if you're looking for professional guidance with music production, then you definitely want to become a Beat Academy member. I mean, just the other day, I just posted an opportunity to get music placed on a commercial and film, and we've had many members succeed and get their stuff placed on places. So I'm looking to pour into people, and I have the Beat Academy platform to do exactly that. So I'm really grateful, and it is a blessing for me to be able to do that for so many of you who are already members. So thank you for being a member. Thank you for, you know, trusting me to invest in you. I'm really grateful. I don't take that for granted. So guys, we're going to be wrapping up our workshop well over time, but I'm grateful we were able to spend a lot of this time together to help you with mixing. I know there's a lot more questions involved with mixing or mastering. Check out the course, I guarantee you. And if it doesn't help you, if it's of absolutely no use to you whatsoever, just email my team. We'll refund you, no questions asked. All right? I just care about you getting what you need to get to impact your music. That's all I care about. All right? So, guys, thank you so much for joining us during this call. I will catch you on our next live stream. This was a lot of fun. So, take care. Thank you for watching.